my great honor, and I suppose under the circumstances, I can still say pleasure, to introduce you and welcome you to this event about the catastrophe in Puerto Rico. I think this is one of the pieces of our FORO URGENTE series that Lilas Benson sponsors, which we obviously can't anticipate in advance what the urgente matter will be, but I think we'd be hard-pressed to find something more urgent than this. I'd also sort of like to give credit particularly to Cesar Salgado for putting together this rapid response team. I think you'd also be very hard-pressed to find a more distinguished group of people to come and speak about this. We had a conference several years ago where they explained to us that there's no such thing as a natural disaster. There are natural events, but it's only when human beings are affected that it becomes a natural disaster. And I think what we're seeing in Puerto Rico today is about as good an example of a natural disaster as you would ever see anywhere. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Cesar.
Yes, I am Cesar Salgado. I'm a professor in the Department of Spanish and the program of Comparative Literature, and I'll be moderating this FORO URGENTE. I have some introductory remarks, and then I'll be presenting our speakers as we go. I believe we all can agree that the magnitude of the devastation and chaos left behind by hurricanes Irma and Maria in the Caribbean are forcing us to reconsider the very notion of regional crisis. Here we are confronting a humanitarian crisis more complex and more confounding than what previous natural disasters have left behind. In the case of Puerto Rico, the reasons behind this extreme precarity are not just environmental. They are man-made and connected to the long history of compromised sovereignty and coloniality that has cursed our island and the Caribbean for centuries. In the case of Puerto Rico, a debt crisis of $74 billion, resulting from its lack of political and economic clout as a territory vis-a-vis powerful U.S. corporate and strategic interests, leads to a public sector crisis in utilities, services, and maintenance, general infrastructure, and environmental regulations. Then this crisis collides with a climate crisis caused by the effects of man-made global warming, producing more frequent and more devastating hurricanes in the Caribbean basin. Add to this mixture a deep crisis in leadership and logistics in the relief effort on the local, federal, and international level, connected to an ongoing exodus crisis that threatens to empty the island of its inhabitants. And what you have is the mother of all crises, la madre de las crisis, para colmo apodada María. What we are witnessing in the news, or when we call home to hear estamos bien, while knowing that that is not the case, is the worst storm of indignity that has ever afflicted Puerto Ricans. Suddenly we realize that even with our famous resilience and spirit of community, both in the island and in the diaspora, our very survival as individuals, as citizens, and as people may be at stake. How did Puerto Rico and other Caribbean countries in distress get to this point? How extensive are the losses, and how do we assess them? Has this disaster received appropriate media coverage? What role has the second-class citizenship or residence in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands played in the matter? How have the debt crisis, fiscal austerity measures, a reduced public sector, and the ongoing exodus to the U.S. contributed to make matters worse? To what extent is this disaster natural and to what extent man-made? How can the Caribbean move forward while confronted by hurricane seasons that seem weaponized by climate change? 4 weeks after the landfall of Maria, Elias Benson hosts a FORO URGENTE to begin addressing these questions. We have here current and former faculty members engaged in the study of economics, environment, law, medicine, and mental health, media, race, gender, society, culture, and migration in Puerto Rico and throughout the region. We also have Austin community representative coordinating humanitarian projects for Puerto Rico and neighboring islands here to inform us about their ongoing reliefs. I'm going to mention the order of presentation, and I'll be introducing each speaker as we go. First, Eduardo Lalo is here, author from Puerto Rico. He's going to start with an eyewitness account of the situation. So we have somebody who actually will be able to share knowledge on the ground. Then we have Carlos Ramos speaking about environmental, climate, and hydrological themes related to the crisis. Francisco Gonzalez Lima on the public health, mental health, and general medical crisis. Monica Jimenez will talk about legal questions behind U.S.-Puerto Rico historical relations. Josiana Arroyo will talk about media coverage. And James Galbraith will talk about the macroeconomic reasons behind the post-Irma and Maria debacle. So we'll be starting with award-winning Puerto Rican writer, essayist, photographer, and visual artist Eduardo Lalo, known for cross-genre books that express his passion for both words and images. In 2013, he won the Rómulo Gallegos International Prize for his novel Simone. His visual work has appeared in many exhibitions. In fact, we have an opening of his exhibition of his work this Thursday at 4 o'clock right here in this very space. You're all invited to come. He was last year a Lozano Long visiting professor at UT Austin, when he taught the graduate seminar Caribbean Poetics. Known for his razor-sharp columns in the island press, Lalo is among the most outspoken and resolute critics of recurring colonialism in Puerto Rico and the world. And each speaker will have from 10 minutes to make a presentation.
Well, I thank you very much that you are here at this occasion. And I would like, first of all, to say thanks to the people at Benson and at the University of Texas, Austin, but especially to the people with whom I have been with some difficulty in touch for the past weeks, with Susanna Sharp, with the director of the Benson Library, A.J. Johnson and Jan Burnett, and also to Sandra, who managed to get us tickets to get out of Puerto Rico, which is an easy feat in this time. I would also like especially to thank Cesar, who has been a great friend during this time, and I thank many other people that have been very hospitable for us here in Austin. Supposedly I should give an eyewitness account, but probably you know more of what happened in Puerto Rico than we know, because for the past almost 6 weeks already, we haven't seen almost no pictures. We haven't been able to read the articles that probably you had read. The most we can open the page, the web page of a newspaper, but rarely we are able to touch the screen and to get that article to come up on the screen. So what I would say about the immediate effect of the hurricane, it's almost obvious by now. 20 hours of hurricane or tropical storm winds, nothing is supposed to hold that. No trees are supposed to hold that, no buildings, no windows. Me and my family, some of whom my wife and youngest son are here, we had to get into a bathroom with our dog and stay there for a few hours at the worst of the storm. But we were very lucky. And we could have lost everything if one single window would have collapsed. So we were more lucky than most of our fellow Puerto Ricans. But I wanted to say something else. I have written in the press, maybe you can get that easily and I get into an idea. about already 3 articles about the hurricanes. But last night I did something that I had not done for probably 40 years or so, almost 40 years, was to write a text in English. I guess the last one I did was when I was ending my bachelor's degree at Columbia in New York, long time ago. This is the first time probably that I speak in English since I left Texas at the beginning of December. And that says something. We are something else. We are not simply an addendum, no, an appendix of this country. So I would like to read these notes that I wrote with some sense of urgency last night. Actor and comedian Bill Murray has sung West Side Story songs as a gesture of support to the people of Puerto Rico in the aftermath of the Hurricane Maria. He even said that Puerto Ricans are Americans, in a gesture of unquestionable generosity and solidarity. But this is not true. Puerto Ricans are not Americans, although Puerto Ricans are American citizens, by virtue of the imposition of this nationality to serve the interests of the United States exactly a century ago. In reality, Puerto Ricans are colonial subjects of the United States, and this created the framework of the dismal situation of our country prior to the arrival of hurricanes Irma and Maria a month and a half ago. Before these hurricanes, there was the unacknowledged hurricane of American colonialism in Puerto Rico. What we confront now is the result of more than a century of an asymmetrical relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico. Donald Trump's buffoonery in our country is not new, although it was uncommonly harsh and demeaning. Trump's performance of mediatized sub-politics is sadly part of a continuum. The United States has used our despondency, be it caused by hurricanes or social factors, as a justification for exploitation and political control. Puerto Rico is conquered land in the same way as the indigenous lands of American Indians are ghettos of U.S. citizenship. In both, the attribution of American citizenship works as a normalization, that is, an invisibilization of conquest and colonialism operated by successive governments of the American people. What Donald Trump did in San Juan is more real than the generous singing of West Side Stories racist and demeaning songs by Bill Murray. We thank him, but at the same time we know that good intentions are media fictions. Trump's tossing of paper towels to a selected group of privileged, and I quote, American citizens residing in Puerto Rico, unquote, comes closer to the mark of what the history of our countries has been. Hurricanes Maria, relief efforts by FEMA and the armed forces are just the most recent chapter of U.S. colonialism in our country. We are American citizens, but we are not Americans. We are Puerto Ricans. Trump knows that and acted accordingly. But he, as all his predecessors, in more than a century, chose to ignore our dignity as a nation and to buy time for American good conscience. Hurricane Maria is not just a natural disaster, if ever such a thing exists. Hurricane Maria is a political disaster, a series of ungainly images of American colonialism in the 21st century. It shows that the real lack of value of American citizenship when it rests in the context of the asymmetrical relationships of colonialism and when history and its responsibilities have been hijacked. The reconstruction of the devastation will not come by the good offices of FEMA or the armed forces of the Army Corps of Engineers, but by Washington's and San Juan's confrontation of the devastation of history. Ironically and shamefully, Donald Trump has been your more honest president. He just tossed paper and spoke his mind. He was convinced that colonialism made him able to do that without consequences. In a perverse way, he did what he was supposed to do, and that is why that incarnates without decorations or subterfuge America's imperialistic legacy. I will return in 4 days to San Juan and will confront a familiar situation. The United States and its institutions are unable to acknowledge their duties. In the 119 years since the American invasion, the Puerto Rican people's plights have been silenced. The American government has left us little space. That's why we can only conceive ourselves as victims of the history of American colonialism and of the misguided uses of American citizenship, or shall we say, of its fictions or of its oppressions. We have no room to construct something else. I don't have with me our flag, but I can tell you that it is not yours. I nevertheless will raise it here in Austin. The Puerto Rican people in the U.S. and in the island know that we are alone. This will be the painful lesson of this hurricane season. The best way that the U.S. can help us is by confronting its history, our history. We are not colonial subjects. We are not even American citizens residing in Puerto Rico. We are Puerto Ricans. Needing to cope with the need to eat and drink acceptable food and water. We are not just a case story of the predatory capitalism. We are Puerto Ricans, human beings hit by history and hurricanes in the American century. But sooner or later, we will be off, and neither the United States nor we will be the same. Any real reconstruction of our country could only be done if both the United States and Puerto Rico create a different relationship, a non-colonial and non-territorial relationship. If this does not happen, we will be in the same place and situation, waiting for the next hurricane. The reconstruction that needs to be done is not only of roads and electric grids, but of politics and citizenship. FEMA and the American Army do not defend us from the hurricanes of history. And these hurricanes do not form themselves near the coast of Africa, but in Washington and Wall Street. In the aftermath of Maria, Puerto Rico and the United States need to start a conversation as equal members of the Society of Nations. Both countries need to change. This is, after food and water, after communications and electricity, our most needed hope. Muchas gracias.
Carlos Ramos Charron has a BA from geology from UPR Mayagüez. He has a PhD in geological sciences from Colorado State University. He's a professor of geography and the environment and of Latin American studies here at UT. He works with soil erosion and water quality, and he teaches a course on the natural disasters in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. I want to give special thanks to Cesar for being kind of the la pega, no, that got this together. It started as a simple email from Monica as well, so I thank her for that, and Paloma, of course, for helping us put this together. As I started thinking about this, I wanted to first, I wanted to make sure that we understood here that this is not just about Puerto Rico, right? This is the whole Caribbean. Many islands of the Caribbean have been hit by the two hurricanes that impacted the Caribbean, Irma and Maria. And I also wanted to give voice to some of my colleagues and some of the people that do science, environmental sciences also in the Caribbean. So as much as I can, I try to put some quotes from them in terms of what are their concerns of the impact of natural resources, and then also what are the concerns for them in terms of doing science as well, as the resources are impacted. Hurricanes, Puerto Rico is not the only place. The Caribbean is not the only place that gets affected by this. But you see here, right, it's not a spaghetti model that they say in the Weather Channel, right? This is actual tracks from 1860 through the present time of hurricanes in the Atlantic, cyclones.